Mario Kart Wii has been up for over 16 years, and throughout this time, 3,329 unique world records have been set. To achieve a world record is a monumental milestone that few can claim as theirs. A world record requires the utmost precision and dedication, which is challenged by the entire player base, all pushing to claim that #1 spot. However, it's evident that some records are more significant than others for a number of reasons. This video will explore the top 20 Mario Kart Wii world records that were ahead of their time. But what does that mean? I'll be defining this term with a reference to these following factors combined: the time period that the record was set, how far ahead were they of their competition, and if the record was an important sub-minute or sub-second time. This is also just my opinion, so feel free to mention anyone's you thought could be on the list. Video credits are also linked in the description. This video is going to be long, so let's get straight into it. Starting this list off, in 20th place, we go to SNES Ghost Valley 2, where German player Kenny set a time of 53.104, improving the former world record by 62 milliseconds from Japanese player Mu. This run absolutely deserves a spot on this list for the absurd time that Kenny was able to set here with 2010 driving. What makes this so impressive is the fact that soft drifting wasn't even standardized until around 2012. However, players would sometimes soft drift turns without understanding the benefits of this tech. A 53.104 as itself is still a phenomenal time to this day that players struggle to beat even with the modern soft drifting knowledge. Additionally, this record lasted for 260 days, being the longest lasting Ghost Valley 2 record until 2012. And that's why this record deserves notoriety for being a run that was truly ahead of its time. In 19th place, we have French player Totem's time of 2:16.884 on Maple Treeway. Totem is renowned for his early mastery of tracks like GCN Waluigi Stadium, Cooper Cape, and Maple Treeway. This one was the first ever sub 217 set on Maple Treeway, improving his own world record by a whopping 443 milliseconds. This run is spectacular, with consistent driving all around, with each turn taken extremely well, evidently seen for how this run was still 8th worldwide over 9 years later, even with players implementing the turn skip shortcut, which saves over 500 milliseconds compared to shrooming at the beginning and going around the U-turn normally. It's also worthy to note that this run was the longest lasting Maple Treeway world record of 444 days up until that point, making this one run to be remembered by the player base, deserving its spot on this list. Taking our 18th place, we head to the sunny and upbeat atmosphere of Coconut Mall, where Canadian player Yasha set a time of 1:56.821. This run is unbelievable for the strats used. No infi plan tricks, no triple boost panel. Players to this day struggle to even get a 156 in the first place, and Yasha does this in 2011 with these strategies, making this run a time to be greatly respected. Additionally, we can see that Yasha and Chaos have a near half-second lead over Sean's legitimate time of 1:57.374. Not to undermine Chaos' amazing time here, but Yasha's world record would end up standing for 1,167 days, which for a 2011 time is incredible, deserving a spot on this list. In 17th position, we go to GCN Mario Circuit with NMID's 131.444. This one is actually more impressive than it seems. With a subpar lap 1, Nick was able to drive a 30.270 lap 2, followed by a wicked 30.372. These incredibly fast splits really show how far ahead of his time Nick was, proposing the possibility of a sub 131 time in mid 2010. It's actually unbelievable how this was his potential when the driving knowledge at the time was highly limited. Even now, a 131.444 is a very respectable time, which driving in 2010 is an amazing accomplishment that cannot even begin to be put into words. Standing for 352 days, this run was beaten by Japanese player Veiyu with a 14 millisecond improvement, to which Enmid would beaten back 6 months later with a 131.421, standing for an astonishing 764 days. Ranking 16th, we find ourselves in DS Peach Gardens, with Canadian player Yasha back at it with a world record of 159.592, standing for 719 days. This run is absurdly quick for 2012 standards, also considering that Yasha switched the meta from spare automatic back to spare manual. This record still stands up to this day, placing 9th on the America's top 10 and the 4th fastest spare manual time on Peach Gardens. I personally found it amusing that after over 4,400 days on the America's tops, with all the new strats with both spare automatic and flame runner manual, Yasha's time stands as a beacon of his legacy, well deserving of the recognition for being one of the players that was so far ahead of his time. Coming in 15th on this list, we have Japanese player Wada S's legendary 221.320 on Bowser's Castle. This record is unbelievable, being on 221.0 to 221.1 pace until the Geysers lap 3. It's very possible that Wada S could have set the first 220 in 2013, which wouldn't happen until 2018. Furthermore, this record stood for 1,298 days. This was also a world record improvement of his 2012 time by 316 milliseconds. Wada S is also notable for truly being ahead of his time, not only on Bowser's Castle, but also Rainbow Road, driving a 227.613 world record in 2010, which to this day is the 9th fastest flame runner time, showing that as a player, Wada S was capable of amazing time trials that were well ahead of his time period, earning a spot on this list. At 14th place, we go to Mario Kart Wii's most technical track in the game, GCN Waluigi Stadium. Now this record is a run that prior to research I'd never even heard of. However, it's ridiculously impressive for how little is known about it. On June 2nd, 2011, Japanese player Koshi would land a monumental 150.432. Get this, without the turn skip. I can't even fathom this. Players struggle to this day to break into the 150 threshold with the turn skip used 3 for 3, saving about half a second per lap. This time is also 4th on the no turn skip leaderboards, only being beat by players that are active today, being Zanoki, Ace, and Connor, all with times in the 148 range. This record is so underrated, and I hope that this video brings some light to this run that was truly ahead of its time. And despite only lasting for 2 days after being beat by the turn skip shortcut, it really does deserve notoriety on this list. Placing 13th, we go back to SNES Ghost Valley 2 with the track's first 52-second time, a 52.994 set by Japanese player Axel on March 1st, 2012. As stated with Kenny's 2010 run, in 2012, soft drifting was still a developing piece of tech that players didn't understand 100%. Additionally, the GCN controller makes these soft drifts super precise and much harder to pull off than it looks. This run would last for 496 days until he improved his own record, shaving 7 milliseconds off. I think for what was known in 2012 about soft drifting tech is what makes this sub a huge deal that players really struggle to achieve today, showing how Axel's soft drifting capabilities were truly ahead of his time. In 12th place, we have a run that wasn't even going to be mentioned in this video. On SNES Mario Circuit 3, American player Tyler would set a 118.107 that lasted for 1,179 days until Luke tied this time in 2017. Now, why wasn't this supposed to be on the list? Well, because of a little thing called triple MT that saves around 80 milliseconds when done optimally. I thought that this run actually had triple MT and was super surprised to learn this time was set without the triple MT on any lap. This is more impressive than it looks, as especially for 2013 standards is ridiculous. Even 9 years later, in July 2022, this time would still be on the worldwide top 10. And yes, that's even compared against 9 years of updated lines along with the triple MT becoming normalized at top level. Tyler's run is also placed 4th worldwide on the double MT leaderboards, only losing to the 3 best MC3 players in the world, being Vincent, Casey, and Luke. Taking our 11th place, we go back again to GCN Waluigi Stadium with the absolute domination of French player Totem. Totem would set a time of 148.861, which would stand as the second longest lasting world record of all time, and still being on the worldwide top 10 until mid-2024. Totem's lap 2 in this run is also to be noted, as it could almost compete with the modern day world record driving, and with a split of 36.094 in 2013 is truly outstanding. The only reason this didn't rank further on the list is because this run was set a little later than most of the other runs on this list, still not to take away from its legacy. Not much more needs to be said, besides obvious, Totem was a player who is undeniably ahead of his time. Breaking into the top 10, we have at 10th place, perhaps a surprising entry, with American player Demon on Maple Treeway, on the glitch category, setting a 157.925. Now there is very good reason for this run being here, despite being set the most recent out of all of the records in this video. Demon to this day maintains a 1.6 second lead on second place, if not for all of the new strats that came that year. I really do feel like this time is super underrated. These shrimless laps are actually unreal, followed by a rapid 24.815 lap 3. To solidify my claim, in a former world record, Demon has hit a glitch lap of 24.471, placing him 4th worldwide on the fast lap leaderboards, not including himself at second. Despite obviously not using the fast lap entry setup with the SSMT, hitting a lap like this under world record pace and pressure truly exemplifies how Demon was so far ahead of his competition here, and I do believe that this 157.925 could realistically be standing as the world record today if the new shots were never developed and if Demon chose not to improve it. On another note, this is also my favorite world record in this entire game, and I hope for the aforementioned reasons, you guys can see my reasoning for placing this run at 10th on the list. Again, a 1.6 second lead on second place with these same strategies. Unheard of. That is out of this world. At 9th position arrives the brilliance of Japanese player Omega and his 59-second flat time on DS Yoshi Falls. This is a historic run that I'm sure most of you watching have seen before. This record holds numerous accomplishments to this day that solidifies Omega as a time trialer that was far ahead of his competition in dominant fashion. This 59.000 was Mario Kart Wii's first world record to reach 1,000 days standing. This time from Omega would also go on to last for 3,940 days on the worldwide top 10. That's all that needs to be said here. This time has legendary status and unequivocally deserves a spot on this list. Coming in at 8th place is a world record on DS Desert Hills set by a veteran of the game, American player Doom, with a time of 135.114. This run is incredible to watch, with Doom managing a 134 level lap 3 with 2011 driving with a split of 31.607 without the wheelie cut. Considering the wheelie cut saves over 200 milliseconds at the minimum, it's so hard to even comprehend this. This time only had one wheelie cut, and it was genuinely possible to see him break the 135 barrier if he kept on going. This record also stood on the worldwide top 10 for an astonishing 3,460 days, and I can assure you that Doom's record is one that the community will remember for years to come, truly ahead of his time, earning a well-deserved spot in our top 10. Ranking in 7th on this list, we arrive yet again at the show that is GCN Waluigi Stadium, but it's for a good reason. This record, set by Japanese player Tatsuya, echoes the accomplishments of the previously mentioned Japanese player Koshi. However, Tatsuya's run is arguably more impressive, being set a year earlier. What really blew my mind was after 2 years of the game being out, Tatsuya was able to manage an astronomical 36.636 lap 3 split without the turn skip. This is so hard to even find words for that explains how impressive this is. Placing 6th as well on the no turn skip leaderboard, Tatsuya's world record here is one that cannot be underestimated. A mid 150 without the turn skip in 2010 is just crazy. Tatsuya, and I can assure you, was far ahead of his time, earning 7th on this list. A little more than 4 years after Enmead's world record on GCN Mario Circuit, Norwegian player Fox would land an astonishing 130.798, earning the number 6 spot. Fox in general was a player who's highly regarded as one of the most dominant time trialers in Mario Kart Wii and was undeniably ahead of his time. This is evident when we take a trip over to the worldwide top 10 today. Fox's world record from March 2015 is ranked 4th in the world. After almost 10 years, only 3 players were able to beat Fox, not mentioning the introduction of double mount tricks a few years later down the line, saving a stupid amount of time. Now when we look at his run closely, there's something that absolutely convinces me that Fox had so much more to go and was much further ahead of his competition than what those final digits let on. On lap 3, Fox gets a bad shroom, and on the straight he has a disaster time loss that tainted the final time of the run significantly. Considering entry in 2021, the world record was a 130.613 by Luke, I began to wonder if these two errors were cleaned up, we could have seen Fox's record last much longer. I was so curious in fact that I recorded a multi-ghost to compare both records, and this is what it looked like. This multi-ghost really does say a lot about how far ahead of his time Fox was. I did the math and accounted for the 2 errors. Fox's record could have lasted for an astronomical 2,162 days, a mere 80 days off becoming Mario Kart Wii's longest lasting world record. Everything about this run, as well as Fox being absolutely dominant across the board, solidifies this record as one that was so far ahead of its time, taking the number 6 spot. And now, we reach the top 5. Starting us off, we have a world record that I'm sure many of us have seen before. Set in December 2009, American player Jorge would drive the first 227 on Rainbow Road, with a final time of 227.916. This run in of itself is one of the most iconic world records this game has seen. In 2009, Jorge had mastered the discipline of Flame Runner on Rainbow Road without any wheelie moon jumps. To this day, 15 years later, there are very few people that have actually bested Jorge's time with the Flame Runner, even with the 250 millisecond time save per lap. It's unfathomable how a year and a half after the game's release, a player can set such a solid run with the strats available at the time. I'd also like to mention Japanese player Retti's 228.065 set 1 day prior to Jorge's sub. Both these guys really knew this track down to a T, and it's so mesmerizing to me the levels of mastery they both had respectively. Astonishing, very well deserved 5th spot on this list. Coming in at 4th place on our list, we see the brilliance of Japanese player Infi in his 147.498 on Drajo Ruins. Infi's reign on DDR lasted for over 6 years, completely untouchable, and his 147.498 would last for 1,420 days until he improved his own record. What really caught me off guard when doing research for this video was a top 10 snapshot from around late 2015, showing Infi had over a half-second lead on 2nd place. This complete dominance is what makes this record high on the list for me. This would still place him 7th worldwide to this day, even with all the new strats, including the hopless sand hop, the wheelie tomb exit, the shroomless, and, of course, the pizza delivery.
Pizza delivery!
No.
I don't know what else to add here. This kind of time with these strats set in 2014 is too much for me to comprehend, rightfully earning a spot very high up on this list. Starting off our top 3, Japanese player Alves would drive a 206.317 on GCN DK Mountain, a world record improvement by 347 milliseconds. This record is very overlooked in my opinion, and absolutely deserves a high spot on this list, and this is why. When we look at the run, Alves was on an insane pace for 2010 standards. This boulder right here is a pace lock that runs on the worldwide top 10 to this day struggle to beat, and Alves managed to beat this 205 pace lock with a cracking lap split of 42.009, very well proving he had the ability to drive at 205 level only 2 years after the game's release. Looking at some top 10 snapshots, we see that Alves had a commanding lead over his competition with a 386 millisecond gap between him and 2nd place. Alves was a top tier DK Mountain time trialer between late 2008 and late 2011 when American player Doom would beat his time by 52 milliseconds. Even entering 2016, his run was still placed 4th worldwide, a testament to how far ahead of his time he was, not only here, but also with his efforts on GCN Mario Circuit, setting the first 131 in February 2010, a magnificent milestone. Overall, Alves was a player that was synonymous with breaking barriers of what people thought possible at the time. Despite his record lasting just over a year, it's evident that his driving skill was much beyond what that 206.317 lets on. As a result, in my opinion, this record deserves recognition for being one of the most impressive of its time, decisively earning a spot in the top 3. And now for our 2nd place. We go to the frozen tundra that is N64 Sherbetland. Now this record might not be a run that people are expecting, but I can assure you, it does justice at really showing how far ahead of his time this player was. In 2010, Japanese player Ken would improve his old world record by 36 milliseconds, setting a 204.361. Now Ken would go on to set a 204.292 world record in 2012, but in my opinion, this 2010 run shows he had the potential for a time to this degree 2 years prior. This run is spectacular, with great chamberlains overall and extremely fast driving for what was known at the time. It's crazy to me how this run that, I remind you, was set in 2010 is only 11 milliseconds off the American tops to this day in 2024. This run would also place Ken at 5th European today, as well as only being 157 milliseconds off the worldwide tops 14 years later. Ken was established as a player who had an uncanny ability to constantly improve the standards for his time, resulting in his complete dominance over the category until he was toppled in December 2014. Overall, Ken contributed greatly to the development of world record driving on N64 Sherbetland. With his 2046 day control over the category, it's evident he was far beyond his time, setting such standards that to this day, very few people have been able to beat. Now, for our number one world record that in my opinion was the furthest ahead of that time, and as a player that has appeared numerous times on this list, we go to his best track, his bread and butter, none other than Canadian player Yasha on N64 DK's Jungle Parkway. Yasha has a very long history on this track in specific, setting records on this track for over 10 years and only being toppled off his throne in 2020 by Luke. Throughout this period, Yasha fended off competition of American player Brendan, Spanish player Russo X, French player Marco, Japanese player Vayu, American player Aruba, and finally Dutch player Thomas. If this doesn't display Yasha's ability to battle his competition for over 9 years while adapting to new driving knowledge and a new wave of players ready to dethrone the DKJP King, then I'm not sure what can do that justice. Now that we understand Yasha's dominant presence on the category, let's talk about the run I've selected in specific that perfectly demonstrates just how far ahead of his time Yasha was. This record by Yasha is the second longest lasting DK's Jungle Parkway world record, only bested by his own 211.885 world record set in 2014 that would last for 1,218 days. Also, if Yasha had stopped at that 212.559, his run would place him 9th on the America's top 10, statistically the most competitive top 10 out of any region that isn't the worldwide top 10. However, this is more impressive than it looks. Why? Well, because of this. This is the current stream strat for DK's Jungle Parkway that would go on to improve the world record by over half a second. Combined with this beginning turn skip after the cannon, updated strats allowed players to save even more time across all 3 laps. Now, even with this time save that almost all runs on the top 10 opts to perform, Yasha's 2009 world record time of 212.559 stood strong, holding its place on the top 10 for over 5,500 days. That's just unheard of. After over 15 years, only 8 people in both the American continents were able to beat this time, and on the worldwide scale, if Yasha stopped improving upon his 2009 record, it would have standed 12 years of players' efforts, an incomprehensible amount of time that shows just how far ahead he was. 16 months after the game's release, he had such a deep understanding of the track that rivals of his generation couldn't compete with. Undoubtedly, this record by Yasha has to be one of the furthest ahead of its time, and I'm not sure what else could take this run's place. Truly outstanding. Yasha as a player was so talented for his skill, it's mind-blowing to me. I hope this video does it justice at really emphasizing his skill for his time period. I feel like if he really pushed himself across all tracks, we could have seen an unmatched time trialer with a ruthless ability to reclaim titles with profound resilience. Regardless, this list is complete, with Yasha's 212.559 standing as the tallest order. When doing research for this video, I actually surprised myself with the amount of world records that were seriously excellent. I really had such a hard time ranking them that I ended up making this a top 20 instead of the initial top 10 because of how many amazing records that all deserve their place in this video. I hope this video brings light to these players and their incredible talent they possessed for their respective time periods. Let me know if you want to see more videos like this, and if you made it all the way, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.